Hi there. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Dorothy Flanagan, and I'm the principal at Dominion Middle School. Almost a year ago, our world flipped upside down in ways none of us could have imagined due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And since that time, we've experienced so much change, and at times, change that has rocked us to our core as Americans. I remember those many difficult days just wishing we could have some normalcy, but knowing that getting back to normal would be a process. So today, I'm very happy to talk with you about just one step in the beginning of that process, the return to learning. While sadly, COVID-19 is still with us and will be for some time, we know based on the most current science that in our area of Ohio, it is now safe to begin the process of returning our kids to school. Many schools have been operating in the hybrid model for quite some time and have had little to no documented spread of the disease. I'd like to share with you our return to learning plan for Dominion and hope to gain your confidence in our ability to safely engage your children in the hybrid model of face-to-face learning. So I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint presentation that will be posted separately to this recording so that you can refer back to it if you have any questions, and share it with your children and maybe your other family members. So the purpose of our orientation is to understand why it's safe to return to learning at this time, to review district and school-based COVID safety standards, to provide an overview of the return to learning plan at Dominion Middle School, and to outline return to learning expectations for students, staff, and families. We're going to do that by discussing COVID safety in our schools, what return to learning will look like, transportation options, the how-tos, and next steps for families. I'd like to start with our Columbus City Schools standards for COVID safety. So let's take a look.
Columbus City Schools is preparing our students and staff to safely return to our school buildings. We have identified 8 indicators to assure school building readiness. These indicators meet all of the recommended health and safety guidelines that are necessary to operate our schools during the COVID-19 pandemic. Indicator 1, signage installed for social distancing and face coverings. All school buildings must have signage installed to show appropriate social distancing and the requirement to wear face coverings. Signage should appear on floors, walls, and doors throughout the building. Indicator 2, PPE delivered and available. All school buildings must have personal protective equipment, PPE, available on site appropriate for at least 6 school weeks, including staff and student masks, disposable gloves, bottles of hand sanitizer, and disinfectant wipes. Special education areas must also have additional PPE, such as face shields, clear face coverings, and gowns. Indicator 3, plexiglass barriers installed everywhere necessary. All school buildings must have plexiglass barriers installed where 6 feet of social distancing is not possible and in common areas such as the school office. Indicator 4, furniture arranged for social distancing. All school buildings must have furniture arranged to accommodate 6 feet of social distancing. This includes desks or tables in classrooms and common areas such as the cafeteria or library. Indicator 5, excess furniture removed or stored. All school buildings must remove or store excess furniture that is not needed due to social distancing requirements. Furniture that is removed from the building will be stored in the district warehouse. Indicator 6, the facility is clean and visually appealing. All school buildings must be clean and visually appealing daily. The custodial staff will ensure that the building is cleaned and disinfected frequently. Indicator 7, classrooms, hallways, and common areas are free of clutter. All classrooms, hallways, and common areas in school buildings must be free of any clutter that could impede social distancing requirements and pose hazards for staff and students. Indicator 8, health separation room identified with staffing plan. All school buildings must identify a health separation room where a student or staff member who exhibits COVID-19 symptoms can wait until they are able to leave the building. The school should also include a plan on how the health separation room will operate. We take the health and safety of our students, teachers, and staff seriously, and through these steps, look forward to welcoming you back soon.
All right. So it's good information. It's good information to understand the basic indicators and standards that we're using to operate all of our Columbus City schools. And we know that our elementary schools have already had a safe return to learning, and we know that that's going to happen for us at Dominion as well. So our COVID safety guidelines are really non-negotiable. We expect that all staff and all students wear their masks at all times, unless they're eating or the child has a mask exemption form on file. We know that masking and social distancing are the two greatest weapons we have to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And as we return to school, masking and social distancing will be enforced. Hand sanitizing will occur upon entry, before and after meals, and twice each class period. We'll talk a little bit more specifically about those times later on in the presentation. And families are also asked to do a COVID self-check assessment each morning before their child leaves for school. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about COVID safety at Dominion. The first thing that we are going to ask parents to do in the morning, every morning when your child gets up and gets ready to come to school, is to do a basic health assessment. Is your child coughing? Do they have shortness of breath or maybe a fever? If they do, they need to stay home. If there are other symptoms of COVID present, like difficulty breathing, chills, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, sore throat, new loss of taste or smell, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting or diarrhea, your child must stay home. You may want to observe them, you may want to contact your physician, but with those symptoms, they cannot be at school. So we know that by keeping our sick children at home and sending our healthy children to school, we'll also be able to stop the spread of the disease. So what happens if, when in school, a child or a staff member does exhibit symptoms of COVID-19? Well, the first thing that happens is that the illness or the discomfort is reported to the school nurse, and that could be reported by the student to the teacher, then to the nurse, or by the staff member to the school nurse. And then the school nurse, who's been trained in COVID safety measures, as we all have, and the administration will go get the student and bring them to the school clinic using special PPE. If COVID symptoms are present, the student will be placed in the Dominion isolation room, which is adjacent to the school clinic, and will be monitored by Nurse Treaster or another trusted adult in COVID PPE. The school nurse will do a health assessment using the Ohio Department of Health COVID algorithm. Ms. Treaster will then contact the parent, and the student will continue to remain isolated. Based on the student's symptom, the student may be sent home, and the parent or the caregiver must pick them up. And so it's imperative that as parents and caregivers, we have a plan for getting our students from school to our home safely. If the student is sent home, they must have a doctor's permission indicating that there's no COVID present, or they must remain home in isolation for 10 days. If the student is COVID positive, further notification will be shared with all students and staff and caregivers at Dominion Middle School. And then if there was exposure present, a different type of notification will be sent only to those families where there may have been exposure. Remember, health and medical information is protected by HIPAA, and so this is confidential information. Names aren't shared, but we will be sharing that there could be a case of COVID in the school, or that there was a reported case of COVID in the school. And then Ms. Treaster will document the illness, the symptoms, and be in touch with the family to ensure that the family has the proper support they need. I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Kate King, who is our Director of Health Services in Columbus City Schools, to explain the difference between isolation and quarantine.
I'm Kate King, the Director of Health, Family, and Community Services for Columbus City Schools. I'm here today to talk to you about isolation and quarantine for when we come back to in-person learning. I want to just go over those words which we hear all the time. Isolation is for people who are sick. ISO sick, isolation. Being sick in this pandemic is having a positive COVID test or having COVID symptoms. People who are sick and are isolated should stay home for 10 days after their first symptom or their test and can come back into society with a mask and social distancing, of course, on that 11th day, as long as their symptoms are improving and they don't have a fever. Quarantine, a different thing, however, is for people who are not sick, but who have been exposed to someone who is positive for COVID-19. Exposed means that that person was within 6 feet of the positive person for 15 minutes or more cumulative, like adding up for the past 24 hours with or without a mask. That's an exposure. People who are exposed are quarantined, which means they should also go home and stay home and not go anywhere, so that in case they did get the virus from their exposure, they got the transmission and contracted the virus, that they will not transmit it to other people either before they get symptoms or if they're asymptomatic. Now, there was a change at the end of last year, at the end of 2020, in the amount of days to be quarantined. So it used to be that people who were exposed 15 minutes or more within 6 feet of somebody who's positive needed to stay away from the rest of society, the rest of not going to Wendy's, not going to work, not going to school for 14 days. And what we found with research is that we know that most people who are exposed exhibit symptoms within days 1 through 10. Now, there's a very, very small percentage of people who get symptoms day 10 through 14. And because of that research, we know that most likely, if you haven't gotten symptoms in those first 10 days after exposure, you're not going to get symptoms and you don't have the virus. So on day 11, people who are quarantined can come back out into society again, social distancing, mask wearing, all of the things that we normally do, but we presume that you are not contagious with the disease. Now, we're still going to watch for symptoms for that day 10 through 14. So if you are quarantined and come back on day 11, you're still going to want to watch for all of those symptoms: the cough, the headache, the runny nose, the diarrhea, the fatigue, all of those symptoms that are COVID symptoms. So we are going to implement those strategies when students come back to schools for both students and staff members. It's really the same for everyone. We're going to make sure that we identify people who need to be isolated and identify people, students and staff members, who need to be quarantined, and make sure that those things happen as soon as possible so we decrease the transmission of COVID-19 in our schools. Thanks for listening today.
All right. Hopefully that video helps you to feel a little more confident about the process of keeping us safe in school and the process of reporting any COVID-19 spread that's in the school. A further step the school district has taken is to create the data dashboard, the CCS COVID-19 data dashboard. Now, this data dashboard can be found on the Columbus City Schools website. I've included the link here. And you can check this daily. You can check it for the district. You can check individual schools. The purpose is to provide transparency on the number of COVID-19 cases in our schools, and understand that the data and figures represented on this dashboard are for informational purposes only. They're not for research. And the information presented is based on numbers reported to the Ohio Department of Health based on the report date that's given to the Ohio Department of Health. So another way to keep transparency with regards to the spread of the disease. Now, we know that our students and our staff and in society, COVID-19 exists, but we're doing all that we can to mitigate the spread in the school. And I want to reinforce that we know the science says that masking and social distancing 6 feet or more are the two greatest weapons we can use to stop the spread of COVID-19. Doing health assessments in the morning before school will be an additional added layer for us as well. So let's talk about something really exciting, the new building. I want to make sure that our families know that right now, as an added layer of caution, the school district is preventing visitors from coming into any of our Columbus City schools, which is why we're not able to offer any face-to-face tours. As soon as we're able, we are going to have a big shindig and open the building up for everyone. But for right now, I'll talk about the footprint of the building and where things are located. And hopefully you can use the maps that I'll include next to review that information with your children. So our school was built in 1924, and as you may or may not be aware, the district has just invested about $18 million worth of renovations to this beautiful old building. Frank Packard, who was the architect of this building back in 1924, designed a very symmetrical building that can be related to the cardinal directions of the earth. And this is how I remember where everything is in the school. So the north side of the building is actually the back of the building, and it butts up against the ravine. The south side of the building is right on Arcadia Avenue. The west side of the building is where our big parking lot is and is on the High Street side. And the east side of our building is on the stadium side. So if you can remember those places, it's much easier to have a framework from which to think about the blueprint of the building and to kind of find your way around. So on the ground floor of the building is the cafeteria and the instrumental music room. And our students will be going into the cafeteria. We're going to talk a little bit more specifically about that later. But also there is a boys' restroom on the east side, southeast side, or northeast side of the building, and a girls' restroom on the northwest side of the building, as well as our outdoor recess entrance and exits. The first floor of the building is the floor that will have the main office, the learning labs, the gym, the theater, the orchestra, and then our community partner rooms. I also want to draw your attention to the stairwells. In their wisdom, the architects designed the new renovations to have some built-in wayfinding. And so the stairwells are the school colors. The west side stairwells are colored maroon, S2 and S3, S4 and S5, as well as S7 and S8 are colored gold. And then on the east side of the building, S1 and S6 are colored navy blue. And so again, thinking about the different colors in the stairwells can also help us find our way around the building. So on the first floor, we have the main office in the middle of the building, the theater, and then the gym. On the west side of the building, in the west wing first floor, we have a conference room, our OSU Department of Industrial Design classroom, the 3D Hive lab, the Polar Bear conference room, the makerspace, the life skills lab and kitchenette, the staff lounge. And then on the east side of the building, we have Mrs. Woodkowski's orchestra classroom, our set design lab, our custodial office, our social emotional learning lab, our student support services office, and then our multiple disabilities classrooms as well. The main entrance is this farthest right front entrance, again, on the south side of the building. Moving up to the second floor, where our 6th and 7th grade students will spend their day. The main spaces are the library, which again is in the front, south side, middle of the school, the balcony to the theater, and then the opening to the gym below, which students can't get to. If we go to the west wing of the school, we'll find our 6th grade classes. And then back to the east wing of the school, we'll find our 7th grade classes. The thing I love about this school is just the logic with which it's designed, and it makes very easy the work of keeping track of our students and having our students separated by grade level. There are enough stairwells and staircases where our students can move separate of one another per grade in a way that's logical and safe. The third floor houses our 8th grade and unified arts. And so again, if we look at the middle of the building, we start on the south side, the front of the building with Ms. Foster's vocal music classroom. Then the balcony open to the theater below, and Mrs. Simonis's gallery, our PBIS gallery, and the art room. On the west wing of the building, we have the Unified Arts classes. Mr. Lombardo and Mr. Wayner, our technology team. And then we have our 8th grade Columbus hearing impaired classes and intervention specialists. And then in the back, we have science labs that can be checked out by our 6th and 7th grade teachers. On the east wing of the building, we have all of our 8th grade team and a science storage lab. So again, we're so excited to bring our students into the building and show them around on their very first day. So let's talk about what learning will look like in the first days of school. So cohort A is Monday and Tuesday. Cohort B is Thursday and Friday. And in both days, students will be in school. There will be equitable instruction. They'll be in school for face-to-face learning, synchronous instruction, and the teachers will still continue to use the Google Classroom to post assignments and communicate. We will have extracurricular activities going on and parent-provided transportation. So our jazz band, our drum line, and spring sports will be extracurricular activities that our students can participate in. Our Wednesday asynchronous day will still continue. All of our staff and students will remain working from home. Staff will provide 60-minute intervals of virtual instruction blocks on Zoom. The building will be sanitized and there will be no extracurricular activities. And I'd like to highlight that we will continue to use the master schedule, the time schedule that we have been using since the beginning of the year for added consistency. So the school day, general information. School will begin at 7:30. That time from 7:30 until we start town hall will allow us to feed our students, to sanitize, to make sure they can put their things COVID safely in their lockers, and then get back to their homeroom for town hall that will operate virtually. The doors will open at 7:15 each morning, and students will have the opportunity to get a grab and go breakfast. Again, we'll continue to implement that same schedule that we've been using, but we do want to emphasize students must be at school by 7:30 to give us the time that we need for preparation for learning for the day. We are going to ask our students to bring their Columbus City Schools issued Chromebooks and chargers into school each morning with them for face-to-face learning in their own personal book bag. We will have additional Chromebooks at school in the event that one or two of them forget their Chromebook, but we do need for them to bring that Chromebook to school each morning. If your child has been using their own personal device, we can issue them a Columbus City Schools Chromebook at this time as well. Students will be provided with a school supply box of school supplies that will be kept at school that will be only for them. On the first day, they will carry their book bags with them through every class, and that book bag will have their school supply box in it that they'll take out of their locker in the morning and put in their book bag, and then put those school supply box back in their locker in the afternoon before they leave. They can store their other personal items. Really, coats and lunch boxes are the only two items we want them to bring from home. They're not allowed to bring any balls or anything to do at lunch because of the lunch schedule, and I'll explain that shortly. It's just a little bit too tight to play and get things out. Students will change classes. They will go to their Unified Arts classes, and they will be given lunch and recess. On good weather days, students will walk around the track for recess, and on poor weather days, we'll be in the gym and students can walk while they're socially distant or run or sit and talk. So let's talk a little bit about just some more general information regarding instructional assignments on synchronous days and instructional assignments and expectations on asynchronous days. So on both days, we're going to continue to use Google Classroom to communicate assignments and also to have that one-on-one communication between teachers and students. On the synchronous days, we're going to try to introduce more projects and experiments and discrepant events to try to get the kids off of the Chromebooks as much as we can, but we still understand that we will be using the Chromebooks with a combination of the online artificial intelligence learning platforms and the use of the McGraw-Hill consumable textbooks for math and the StudySync consumable textbooks for ELA. There will be no exchanging of papers between teacher and student, although the teacher may provide some hard copy work for the student that's prepared COVID safely. Our Library Learning Center will be open for a COVID safe book checkout, and we encourage students to do so. So instructional assignments on the asynchronous day, which is Wednesday, is going to look a little bit like teachers following up on in-person learning through that virtual Zoom 60-minute block of touch base on the experiments, the project, the writing assignments, the review, preview activities. We'll supply any materials that the students need to do those assignments at home. We do require the students to log into Infinite Campus on that asynchronous day to take their attendance, and their participation will be noted by the teacher when the students turn in their assignments that are assigned for those days. And then the teachers will again be providing that 1 hour block of instructional touch base for the students on Wednesday. So let's talk about lockers. We have enough lockers that Mr. Brown's been able to assign each teacher, each core content teacher who has a homeroom, 50 lockers. So we know that we can assign the students lockers based on their cohort, and they will be 4 to 6 feet away from each other while the lockers are in the school, while the students are in the school, and then the students will be sent to their lockers based on how close their neighbor is so that we can maintain social distancing. So it'll be a staggered send to the lockers. Lockers may not be decorated this school year, and the locks on the lockers are new, and the combinations this year are 2 cycle combinations, meaning that the students will only need to turn them twice rather than the 3 cycle combinations we had at the old building. After those combination locks are turned twice, they'll stop. And that's when the student knows that they should open the locker and that the combination was entered correctly. Students will be, of course, permitted to use the restroom. They'll be given restroom breaks throughout the day, and they're able to use the restroom independently if they need to, independently of the class. Restroom entrances will be monitored by staff to ensure that no more than 3 students are in the space at a time. We'll also be using paper disposable passes so that we know where students are and that they've had permission from a teacher to use the restroom. And then the teachers will be tracking the students' comings and goings throughout the day, whether it's to the restroom or on an errand, through a tracking system to allow us to ensure that we can track if there is an outbreak of COVID. Our water fountains will continue to be turned off, and students will be given bottled water that will be available to them in classrooms and in the cafeteria. So let's talk about our classrooms. Our classrooms are already fitted with 15 to 20 desks per classroom, depending upon the physical size of the classroom. Every desk is 6 feet away from the next desk and is fitted with a plexiglass sneeze guard. All classrooms have sanitizing wipes, hand sanitizer, extra masks, and gloves that are available for staff and students. Students upon entry to the classroom will all be given one sanitizing wipe to wipe down their workstation. And then again, this is upon entry. They will then be directed to sanitize their hands, throw the sanitizing wipe away. And then they'll do that again before they leave the classroom. Sanitize their workstation, sanitize sanitize their hands, and then transition to the next class. Every student coming into and out of a class will do this. Again, this is to ensure that the workspaces are clean. Choir and band students will have special masks so that they're able to participate in instruction in those classes. So let's talk about what school will look like before lunch. So again, our school day will begin at 7:30, and this will allow us time to sanitize hands, to sanitize desks, to go to breakfast, to go to lockers, and then to sit down for town hall to begin at 8 o'clock. Our doors open for breakfast at 7:15 each morning. And so that's when students can be dropped off. That's when buses will begin dropping students off. And we'll continue to implement that same instructional schedule that we have been all year. Dominion staff will monitor the entry both in the front and in the rear. We'll talk about that in a moment, so that all students, to ensure that all students are properly masked and to provide hand sanitizing. Students must have their CCS issued Chromebook and personal backpack, and each student will be given a school supply box that will remain at school. Each student will also be offered a grab and go breakfast through our cafeteria. So students can be dropped off in the morning by parents, and that drop off is on the north side of the school. I'll show you a map in a minute. Buses will be dropping off on the south side of the school off of Arcadia Avenue, and those students will come in the front door. Students will go to the cafeteria for breakfast directly, and they will either eat in the cafeteria or in the auditorium for our overflow. Students who have eaten at home will report to the gym, where they will sit in spaces that are already designated, and they will be socially distant from one another. And then town hall will continue to be live streamed in the homeroom teachers' classrooms prior to first period. So let's look at the map and talk about how our parents will drop off our students. So on the west side of the building is located our large parking lot, and the traffic pattern to get into the building is on the west side. So any parent who, even in the future, would be coming into the school will enter into this parking lot on the west side of the building. And this is where we want our parents to enter to drop their students off. It's one-way traffic around the school. So you'll drive into the parking lot. Let's go back. You'll drive into the parking lot on the west side. You'll continue around to the side, to the back of the school, and then you'll stop, where we will have signage and we will have adults waiting to let you know to stop there. And your child will get out of the passenger side or the back passenger side of the car. They will enter into the back entrance by the instrumental music classroom, which will allow the students who are carrying instruments to simply go down into the instrumental music storage room, where they will be masked and be walking socially distant and will be monitored to drop off their instrument. From there, those students can simply walk down the steps into the cafeteria to get their grab and go breakfast, or walk up the steps into the gym if they've already eaten. Then the parents will just continue around, goodness sakes, will continue around the school to the east side of the school, and will exit out onto Arcadia Avenue. I want to caution us all, as we're returning to school and returning to learning, to please be careful. We'll have students walking to school. We'll have buses pulling in to drop off. Please slow down and be careful. Watch for our students. Watch for other cars. We want to ensure that all of our students are safe every day at Dominion Middle School. Okay. And then the morning drop-off directions for the buses. So our buses will drop off again on the south side, the front-facing face of the building. They will come from Interstate 71 or from Indianola, driving west on Arcadia Avenue. They'll simply pull up to the front of the building, drop off their students, who will walk through the front entrance, the main entrance, into the secure vestibule, where we will have adults waiting who will check to make sure they're masked and then sanitize their hands. They will walk down the main hallway down the steps into the cafeteria where they can get their grab and go breakfast, eat in the cafeteria, or go to the overflow in the auditorium. There'll be plenty of adults available directing students where to go. There'll be adults lined all through this corridor, so students are guided on their journey to the cafeteria. If they've already eaten breakfast, they'll go up the steps into the gym and wait for adults to take them to their grade level hallway and their locker and homeroom. So let's talk about the school day during lunch. Our students will all be escorted during their lunch period by their teachers using grade-specific travel routes that the staff and I have established throughout the building. Sixth graders will never see seventh or eighth graders. Seventh graders won't see sixth or eighth graders, and eighth graders won't see sixth and seventh graders. The grade level will be divided by homerooms. Half of the homerooms will go to the cafeteria first and eat, while the other half of the homerooms will enjoy recess or some social time. And then we'll flip-flop about halfway through. We want to try to maintain a number around 50 in the cafeteria, and that's why we are splitting the group in two to reduce the number of students in there. Remember, we're only going to have half of our students. And so while right now we have a population of 609 students, we expect 300 of them to be there across all 3 grade levels on each day, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday in their cohorts. Students will sanitize their hands again. Remember, they just sanitized their hands when they left their classroom. They're going to sanitize their hands again before they enter the food service line. Tables will be sanitized in the cafeteria by food service staff. Students should have 15 to 20 minutes to eat their lunch. We'll be offering a cold lunch and a hot lunch. All of the sides will be pre-packaged, and so students will really only have the one choice for the main entree, and then they'll pick up a bag that will contain their condiments, their utensils, and their sides, which will include fresh fruit and vegetables, and some carbohydrates. Students can bring a lunch from home if they wish. They'll be sitting at tables in the cafeteria that are fitted with sneeze guards. They are, of course, able to remove their masks while they eat. And again, we want to make sure that we try to keep around 50 students at a time in the cafeteria, although the cafeteria has the capacity, the COVID-safe capacity for about 75 students. Then the students will transition from lunch to recess through separate doors, again, to minimize the number of students who they pass and see. And then the grade level teachers will come down and pick our students up from both lunch and recess, take them back upstairs to their 6th, 7th, or 8th grade wing in order to continue learning for the day. After lunch. So after lunch, we'll continue learning. We'll either go to Unified Arts if we're in 6th grade. We'll continue in our core classes in 7th grade and 8th grade. And the instructional day will end at 2:25 in the afternoon. This will give us 5 minutes for us to, again, sanitize our hands, get our students to their lockers, and get them ready to leave. There will be Dominion staff available to monitor the entry to ensure that all students are properly masked and provided with hand sanitizer as we dismiss. Staff will remind students to take their CCS issued Chromebooks home and they're in their personal backpack, but leave their school supply box in their locker. And then on Tuesdays and Fridays, students will also be given food boxes, snack boxes to take home with them as well. Afternoon pickup. So our students who are being picked up will be called down first, and they will be escorted to the gym where they will line up by grade. They will be escorted out the back, north side of the building, out the back, and then over across the stadium, over across the sidewalk, back to Calumet. And that's where we're asking our parents who are picking up their students to be waiting for them, either on Calumet or in the Presbyterian Church parking lot. Buses will then pick up on Arcadia Avenue on the south side of the school, and they will pull up bus by bus. We'll be calling our students out bus by bus to the front of the school, to the south side of the school, where they will be dismissed. And then walkers and parent pickups, again, will be escorted off of the school property back past the stadium on the sidewalk there to Calumet. So let's talk about transportation and how we're going to get our students to and from school. We have a couple different options for transportation. The CCS yellow bus transportation, which is how most of our students will get to school. Routing information will be found on the parent portal when it's available, and it's not up there yet. Buses will drop off at Dominion Middle School beginning at 7:15 a.m. And there is COVID safety, of course, on the school bus. Students must be masked. They will sanitize their hands when they get onto the bus. There'll be one student per seat, and siblings can sit together in the bus. And then if the distance between school and home is 10 minutes or less, 2 students can sit in a seat. The buses will pick up and drop off on Arcadia Avenue. Students also can walk or ride their bike to school, and we've partnered with Safe Routes to School to identify safe routes and to give information, safety tips on getting to school safely. If the students are riding their bike, we will have a safe place for students to park their bikes. It's not installed yet, and I want to recommend that if and when your students are riding their bikes to school, they will need to have a lock to secure their bikes to the bike rack that will be installed. But students will need to wear helmets if they're going to ride their bikes. I want to make sure that all of our students have some sort of reflective device, either on their book bag or on their coat. Even reflective glow-in-the-dark duct tape would work. Keep their hands on the steering wheel of the bike, or not the steering wheel, the handlebars of the bike at all times, and then crossing the street safely. If your students are walking to school, please walk the route with them prior to the start of school to ensure they know how to get to school. Please stick to the route that parents have established and that our Safe Routes to School team has established. Make sure, again, that there is some sort of reflective device on your children, whether it's the reflective duct tape or a reflector that blinks, that there's some light that people who are driving can see your child with, and then teach them how to cross the street safely at crosswalks. So the map that I am showing you is a map that was created by the City of Columbus Safe Routes to School team. And this is for both biking and walking. So you notice that the school is in the middle. There's a 1/4 of a mile around the school, and then established a 1/2 of a mile around the school. And we know that the safest routes to school are going to be by taking Tibet to Calumet to Arcadia, or by taking Weber to High Street to Olentangy to Calumet to Arcadia, or Hudson to Arcadia, but refer to this map for the safest route for your child to either walk or bike to school. And then a really new and exciting partnership that the school district has established with CODA for our 8th grade students is a way for our students, our 8th grade students only. This is not available to 6th or 7th grade students. It's only for 8th grade through 12th grade students, is to use CODA to get to school. And so all of our 8th grade students are being given CODA passes through the CODA Connector app to use CODA to get to school. So our 8th grade students can download the CODA Connector app on their Android or iPhone with the iOS 6 or higher upgrade. And any directory information that we have for your student, and we need their cell phone number, we've already asked them to provide that to us, will be given to CODA so that CODA can automatically populate their personal CODA connector. The students can ride the CODA bus to school. They can use it for an extracurricular activity. If they have a little job, they can use it to get to and from their job. It's good 7 days a week, and parents are responsible for supervision. So parents, you can also download the Coda Connector app. You can trace your child. You can see where they are on that bus at all times. And I would also highly recommend using an app like Life 360 or tracking your child through their iPhone as well, just to keep eyes on. But we're really excited about the Coda partnership. Safety considerations. Remember, and this is something I need parents need for you to understand. We are never going to allow our students to leave the south side of the building at the end of the day to get into a car that is parked across Arcadia Avenue. It's not safe for them to cross Arcadia Avenue. And so if you're dropping your student off, we need you to use our drop-off procedure. It is for your students and all of the other students' safety. And when you're picking your student up during the day, which we're going to talk about in a moment, we'll tell you where to park. But please, if you're picking your student up at the end of the day, please convey this information to them so that they know that you and I are aligned on what is safe for them and a safe way for them to get to your car. I'm a mother too, and I'm in a hurry a lot of times. And I just want to emphasize that saving 3, 5, 10, 15, 30 seconds is not worth a life. Please make sure that you're being conscientious and following our school dismissal procedures. Students are not permitted to walk home during the school day, even with parent permission. That's a Columbus City Schools policy, and we'll be enforcing that. And then the Coda stop is right on Arcadia in very close proximity to the school. I also want to make sure to re-emphasize that if your child, your 8th grade child, is going to use Coda, parents, please download that app and maybe even do some dry run rides with your students so that if they have any questions, you can answer them. You can establish some expectations for them and discuss safety with them before school starts. So let's talk about some of the how-tos. So several parents have reached out to me. They're very nervous to send their children back to school and they want to remain in the virtual. But I need you to know that remaining in the virtual will remove any of the face-to-face virtual instruction your child is now receiving. Right? When our teachers come back to school, they are going to be teaching face-to-face the students who are in front of them and will not be teaching students on Monday or Tuesday, Thursday or Friday through Zoom. There are many reasons why. One of them is safety and another is confidentiality. And the third is teachers cannot manage students who are at home learning on Zoom and students who are learning face-to-face. And so we are going to be teaching those students face-to-face on the days that their cohort is in session. So knowing that, you do have some options. You can think about enrolling your child in the Digital Academy. You can also work with us to establish a plan for your child to get virtual learning on Wednesdays when their teacher is delivering that virtual learning. So the expectation is that all students return to school. Remaining in the virtual will provide students with face-to-face instruction on Wednesday, and students will be responsible for course assignments. Students will also be counted absent on the days that they should be in school. So please understand this. This is a state law. This is nothing that I am choosing to do, but we do have to, we're obligated to enforce House Bill 410. We will be sending attendance letters, phone calls from teachers will happen. We will be working with parents on planning for better school attendance, and students who are learning in the virtual still will be considered chronically absent. Now, knowing all of that, parents, we can't force you to send your child to school, but I wanted to be very transparent around what the learning will look like. It will be very different than the than the virtual learning, the face-to-face learning that your child is receiving at this point in time. Dismissal requests. What do you do if your child has an appointment during the school day? Well, first, I'd like to ask kindly that you please schedule any appointments that your child may have, doctor's appointments, orthodontist appointments for later in the afternoon. If you need to pick up your child during the school day, please plan ahead. Please kindly give us a 15-minute phone notice so that we can ensure that your child is ready to go. And you'll be picking your student up by pulling your car up to the south side, the front entrance, the Arcadia Avenue side of the building. Your child will be in the office if you've called ahead. If you haven't called ahead, you're going to need to give us probably about 10 minutes. Consider the size of the building. We're going to need to call for your child. They're going to need to go to their locker. So the best thing to do is to call ahead. But you'll get out of your car, you'll come to the main entrance, you'll buzz to get in, you'll be asked to identify yourself and your purpose for being there. Miss Bosley or Miss Laura will allow you into our secure vestibule, but please understand that the Columbus City Schools buildings are all closed to visitors, and so you will only be able to get as far as the secure vestibule. Your child will then be sent out to you through those office doors. If you have any questions, please do not enter the office. Please just call us or send us an email. We'd be happy to answer them. School attendance. So teachers are responsible for documenting attendance on synchronous learning days while we're in the hybrid. That means that if your child is in school and the day that they're in school in person, the teacher will be taking attendance. Your child will not be required to enter their attendance in Infinite Campus. But on those asynchronous days, they will be required to go into Infinite Campus and check mark that they're in attendance. The teachers will then be backing that up by clicking that, yes, the child participated as well. If the child turned in their assignments and did what the teacher asked them to do for that day that was documented in the Google Classroom. Attendance change requests. So several parents, have called us and said, hey, my child was in school on this day, but they were marked absent. How can that be? Our teachers can only change attendance if they know that your child was in the session. So on the return to school days when we're face to face, it's easy because your child will be right in front of us. But on those asynchronous days, the only way we know your child is in school is if A, they are participating in the Zoom and their camera's off and we can see them participating, or B, their camera is off and they're participating in the chat, or C, they're actually turning in their assignments. If none of those have happened, we're not able to change attendance. All right. When students are participating in class, the teachers are clicking participated, which overrides the students' attendance if they forgot to log in. If you have any questions, please contact Ms. Stokes Ingram. If your child is going to be absent from school in the face-to-face or at home in the virtual, we ask that you please contact Ms. Stokes Ingram by sending her an email to let her know, and then we can document the absence. Students and parents can always find student assignments in the Google Classroom, whether your student is learning at home in the virtual on Wednesdays, or whether or not they're ill and they need to take some time off. They can make up those assignments by looking in the Google Classroom. All right. How do you change cohorts? This is a very popular question. The big thing to know is that only parents can change cohorts. I don't have that ability. And so if you're interested in changing your cohort, you simply go into the parent portal, click on blended learning, and then, or click on more, and then click on blended learning, and you'll be prompted to change the cohort. The one thing to know, though, about cohort changes is if you request to change a cohort for one child, it will automatically change a cohort for the other child. All right. Children in one household have to stay in the same cohort. Students with special needs are eligible for Cohort E, which is a virtual learning cohort. Our teachers of students with special needs have much smaller classrooms and are much better able to safely teach students face-to-face and in the virtual simultaneously. But only students who have special needs are eligible for Cohort E. Dominion Cohort A is larger right now than Dominion Cohort B, and I still am asking if you are a Cohort A parent and you can change your child's cohort without changing your elementary school children to Cohort B. If you could do that, we would be greatly appreciative. We're still trying to balance those cohort sizes so that our students, our student numbers in the classrooms are closer to 15 to 20. Infinite Campus Parent Portal. It's an absolute necessity that our parents use and know how to use and have activated their parent portal. You use the parent portal to make a request to change your child's cohort, to update emergency contact information, which is another absolute necessity. We have got to have accurate contact information and an accurate way to contact you or a family member in the event of an emergency or an illness. You use the parent portal to see CCS transportation information, to importantly monitor your child's grades and attendance, and then to take advantage of CCS programming like the school choice lottery and the summer learning experience. So let's talk about what your next steps are as a parent in a family. So beyond getting sick, this has been such a stress on our students, on their mental health, their social emotional health, this COVID-19 pandemic. So one of the things that we want to do is ensure that we have a positive start. And we can start by having conversations with our kids. We can recognize and address their fears, their sadness, their grief about losses that they've had. We can teach and reinforce everyday preventative actions and COVID safety, masking, social distancing, frequent hand sanitizing. We can create a routine that mirrors the school day. It's a great time to start getting the kids to bed at a decent hour. Middle schoolers need 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night. Get those cell phones out of their rooms, get the TVs out of their rooms. They can read a book to get drowsy and to fall asleep, but their brains need some peace and no blue light in order to do that. So right now is a good time to start building that habit to get us back into school. Recognize and discuss that everybody has kind of a different level of comfort with the return and with the whole idea of COVID. Some of us don't believe in masks and don't want to wear them, although we will because we have to. Some of us haven't been out of our houses. So as we're coming back to learning, it's very, very important that we discuss that with our students, and we discuss that it is an expectation that regardless of how we feel, what we believe, that we respect one another. I was taught, just like Bambi says, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And so while we may disagree with people on COVID and other aspects of our society, it's important to note that we ought to probably keep our negative opinions to ourselves and just let each other be so that we can get back into this routine of learning safely. Please make sure to discuss and embrace as a family healthy habits, whether they're physically healthy habits, eating healthy, getting outside and getting exercise, emotionally healthy habits, communicating effectively in an emotionally healthy way, or spiritual habits that help build our spirit in whatever way our family is right for our family so that we can maintain good, positive mental health. So as we move forward, this presentation in particular, that again will be posted on our website, is posted on our website if you're watching it. The PowerPoint presentation is also posted separately, will be followed up by a series of orientation Q&A Zoom sessions. This is where you can come in and you can ask me any questions that you have about this presentation, the information in this presentation, or the return to school. Maybe you have questions that I haven't addressed. Those orientation Zoom sessions are listed below, along with the Zoom link that will be emailed to parents along with a copy of this presentation. They are next Tuesday, March 9th from 6 to 7 p.m., Wednesday, March 10th from 11:30 to 12:30 p.m., Tuesday, March 16th, from 6 to 7 p.m. and Wednesday, March 17th from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Those Wednesday sessions are 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. to allow people who may be working an afternoon shift or an evening shift, or have their lunch hour sometime then, to be able to take advantage of the Zoom sessions. So that's all I have for the presentation and the explanation of the presentation. Again, please join us for the Zoom sessions to get any of your questions answered, and call us or email us if you have questions. Thank you.